All right, everybody. We got I think this is our first interview on the channel. We have one of the storyboard artists from X-Men 97, y'all. I'm super excited. I'm super hyped to pick his brain for the limited time that we have with him before he goes off and, creates something spectacular or cures cancer or something like that. You never know. You never know. Let's get this show on the road. No, this isn't the background. If this was an actual house that I lived in, I wouldn't be on YouTube. But it's okay. we have Justin. Justin, what's
Nice to
going
meet
on,
you
man?
guys. Nice to meet you guys. I'm glad to be here.
Good, sir. So, can you give us just maybe a background on how you got into entertainment, maybe how you got into storyboarding, like what led you there?
Yeah, it's a combination of a few things. I've been drawing my whole life. My brother drew, and it was something that he passed down to me in terms of like inspiration. And I got into animation around middle school. I used to animate on my DS all the time, and it kind of got me into the realm of making stuff move and like
Mm.
getting out of just making static art. And once I broke into that, I kind of never started like I never looked back. I always liked to make comics and stuff, so making stories and making visual stuff move was it felt like it was a whole new realm that I needed to explore. And once I got into college, I majored in animation, and
Wait, so you're trained in animation?
yeah, I mean, that was kind of my original focus was to be an animator. I kind
Okay.
of went into storyboarding because it was a more practical job line, just because animation is very limited in the US. There's not too many studios that actually do animation. At least the style that I wanted to go for was more like action, traditional kind of stuff. So it just seemed like the closest replacement for animation, where you're doing most of the setup of the shots. And storyboarding now is so much more complex than it used to be. That
Okay.
it's pretty much animation
Because
now,
that's
or
what I was
sometimes.
thinking too.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I remember like back in the because I did a few storyboarding for a few shows like way back in the day, in like
hmm
pre-concept era, and it was just it was like some bootleg program, and I draw,
yeah,
in page after page. Now I'm seeing storyboards. I'm like, that's not a storyboard, right? That's animation. That's like an animatic at this point. Y'all are doing
no,
shadows
yeah,
and lights and stuff, making people move. I'm like, this is entirely different. And I wonder how much
yeah.
of that is just the evolution of the artist, or how much of that is just the standards of like this is what the studios want now. Like, hey, this is the quality for storyboarding.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Mm.
I think it's also the programs being more accessible and easier to use. It allows for just people to make stuff at a faster rate than they used to. There's certain positions in the pipeline that are eliminated now because the program can kind of like fill those jobs of like being almost like an editor, and then you're almost doing key animation. It's it it's not. It's kind of controversial because some people think that it shouldn't be the expectation to make animatics every time you storyboard,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's just kind of like the standard now. Like
Mm.
it's just kind of what it is. Like things evolve and artists get better. With information being so accessible now on YouTube, you could just look up how to like frame stuff, and back then that was a lot harder to do. So it was ignorance is bliss. If you don't know that it's there, you're not going to be able to progress in those areas. And I feel like back then that was one of the things that you would see with a lot of boards, where it was just doing what it needed to do. Whereas boards now are almost like doing what they need to do and more, which almost expedites the process in terms of like making the show work.
So would you say is doing more on a storyboard? Because I would think the barrier to entry is now a little more steep due to the fact that
Yeah,
there is accessibility of, okay, this is an example of a board that was done for Iron Man 3, or this is an example of a board that was done for a show. Now you have to meet that with your art style or how you present it.
yeah, 100%. I mean, the bar has definitely been raised with the competition and everything. There's also, a ton of different genres that don't require as much animatic like work.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I think, yeah, I think artists just have evolved. Like the same thing with music, musicians have evolved, and it's one of those things where the standard practices that we used to get used to now are just kind of um, the bare minimum.
Mm.
Yeah.
Damn, that's wild. Okay. All right. So no more storyboarding for me. Uh that job is out of the
I mean,
question. What programs? You said that you use, do you use like Storyboard Pro or what?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I
Is
almost primarily draw on Storyboard Pro now because I'm
is
so
is that the
I'm fluent.
industry standard, or is that just
Yeah,
okay?
it's the industry standard. All the storyboard jobs I've worked so far, we've used that, and it was expected that I knew how to use it.
Oh
Good thing I
wow.
knew how to use it, but yeah, they expect you to kind of know how to move the camera around and how to mess with like important stuff. And it's a pretty simple language, but definitely like if you don't know it, there's a little bit of a learning curve there.
Okay, now when it comes to, can you run us through like the pipeline of the storyboard? Let's say you have, hey, we have this shot. I don't know, Wolverine fighting Sabretooth or whatever. How does that go from director to you? How's that pipeline work?
So usually, they'll give me a script,
Mm-hmm.
and the script will have pretty much the action mapped out and the dialogue. It's not too specific because they want the artist to have a little bit of liberties in what they add.
Okay.
And you know, uh, at that point, my role is just to visualize it, and make it a visual piece. So yeah, it just goes straight from script to however many pages they give me or they assign me. Say for instance they gave me 5 pages to storyboard. They give me a deadline, and I just have to like turn those sequences by then, and then they get notes and they go through iterations, or you know, that's kind of how it initially gets started, with the script to roughs, and then after roughs, you go into cleans.
Do you have any secret sauce when it comes to visualizing what you want in the shot, or how to best show this fight scene or this dialogue, whatever the sequence is? Are there certain go-to shots? You're like, okay, I want this to be establishing shot, and then yada yada.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely a certain method that I kind of generally follow, but I usually fill it out by scene. Sometimes I feel like I might need a little more planning with something,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's other times where I just go straight into it, and work a little more unconventional. I think that's closer to the way I usually work, because I'm coming from like an animation type of, um, internet style animation type of thing. I kind of just jump straight into the side of making it move, and
Mm.
that allows me to like visualize the action a little faster sometimes. It could also leave you in a situation where you didn't plan out as much, so you kind of have to backtrack. But I've found it to be helpful sometimes when I'm trying to like knock out stuff very fast.
How important is your workflow, and how did you get that established?
Just trial and error. When I first got hired, storyboarding, it was a little bit of a rude awakening, just because I was straight out of college
Mm.
and I was recommended for the position like a month after I graduated. And I didn't really have any experience, but they threw 10 pages at me,
Mm.
and I was expected to just do it. And it was like, I didn't really have a method to the madness, but I just had to get it done. And what didn't work that time or what stressed me out, I just made sure I wasn't going to do that anymore. And I just kind of followed my peers. There was a lot of really, 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 really talented artists that I worked on my first show, Genlock, and they kind of taught me, what you should kind of how you should carry yourself as a storyboard artist, and like how you should like get stuff flowing and get your work done.
So that brings up an interesting point, 'cause you said that you were recommended for the job. How important is networking when it comes to when it comes to getting positions, right? Getting the next job.
Yeah, networking is 100%, probably 70% or 80% of the focus.
Woo!
You have to know people, and people, people trust people that they know, and they'll hire those people. I know for me, all the jobs I've worked so far have been recommended, and it's just from people that I've known. And um, even my first job, it was a guy that came to Career Day. He
Mm-hmm.
worked on Quora, and he looked at my work and gave me some tips. And he had a job that they reached out to him for, but he couldn't do it, so he needed somebody else to fill that position. And he hit me up a couple of months later and asked for my information, and then
No way.
bam, just like that, I was a full time storyboard artist on Genlock. And
Wow.
it was definitely really cool. I skipped the revisionist phase, which was interesting, which I think also kind of made me like feel the need to work hard because it lit a fire under me. Like, okay, this is serious. um, but it was a good experience, and definitely helped my workflow for sure. But
Now,
networking, super important.
do you find yourself going to events in order to network, or how does that? How do you network, given where you are right now, or how did you do it before?
Just being cool with people on the show. If they have events, going to stuff like Lightbox, CTNX, and going to those events and linking up with people that you've seen on social media and just meeting mutuals through mutuals, and it kind of like that, just let it happen organically, but also kind of um, be looking for the opportunity to network as well.
Okay, do you carry like a card, or is it mainly just do, hey, follow me on Twitter or follow my Instagram? Is it mainly social media now?
Social media has really changed the game. A lot of the times, people will just exchange socials. I know
Mm,
when I went to Lightbox, I met a bunch of people that I knew through Instagram. I never met in person, and when we all exchanged information, we just exchanged Twitters and Instagrams. So it was
wow.
definitely, there was a couple of business cards being thrown around, but a lot can be shown through social media. I post all my art, or a lot of my art, on social media, so it's already a gateway to see what I'm dealing with. Um, so yeah, I think definitely social media has kind of filled that gap of, like, if you don't have a business card, it's not the end all be all, because you can have a link tree, a ton of things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody doesn't use social media, but I mean, it's pretty common now. So
Yeah, especially as an artist. Now, if
yeah,
say if somebody wanted to get into storyboard artistry, because I know with animation you usually have like previs animation that you start off from that and then you work your way to junior animator and then go that pipeline. How does that work with storyboard? Or like is storyboard like the beginning, or is there like a
yeah,
prerequisite before that
yeah. There
position?
there usually is a prerequisite. Like I said, I was kind of thrown a a rare opportunity, or not rare, but a bigger plate to fill. Usually, you start off as a revisionist. I
And
just
what
started
is
off
a
as a storyboard
revisionist? I'm
artist.
sorry. What is a
So
revisionist?
so storyboard revisionists, they pretty much are responsible for revising or changing whatever the storyboard artist needs to change but
Mm,
doesn't have time for, or is kind of like, if, for instance, say the storyboard artist does a sequence, they turn it into the director. The director has notes, but that storyboard artist has to go to the next sequence. That's where the revisionist comes in, and whatever, maybe they didn't want the punch to be that long, so they told you to shorten it, or they want the facial expressions to be different, or sometimes it can be even more complex to where they'll change a whole scene and you're responsible for reboarding some of it.
mm,
Um, that is more on the intense side of revisions,
mm-hmm.
and that's pretty much just storyboarding. Uh, but yeah, usually you start off as a revisionist, which is kind of like it's a gateway to storyboarding. It kind of teaches you everything you need to know about what a storyboard should look like when it's complete, and all the things that, like, generally you want to look out for that are being corrected. So it's a good stepping stone for sure.
Now, for storyboarding, what are some? I would say, what are some foundations? Like, what are something? Because like for animation, you have to have a strong sense of body mechanics, especially in gaming, timing, spacing. What are some things that you would need to have a strong foundation in before applying?
Yeah, I'd say just have really good draftsmanship, know how to
Mm,
draw a lot of different things, how to adapt. You're always going to be adapting. There's always going to be things thrown at you that you're not going to be ready for. So just make sure that like your fundamentals are solid, figure drawing, perspective, and then on top of that, having animation knowledge just can just level up your boards to a different level. Just because it's ultimately going to be animated if you're working on animation. So knowing how to make something feel like it's already in that finishing stage, or to give it that extra oomph to make it feel like it's a finished product, definitely helps. But having good draftsmanship and all that really help. Knowing the program is good, but I've
hmm
seen guys like that are just really good artists, comic artists and stuff, and they kind of have static boards, but their positions and their camera angles and their staging is so solid that uh, it can kind of like carry the whole board.
Wow. Do you
Yeah,
recommend, as far as let's say watching films and stuff like that, like where do you get your
yeah.
reference or ideas for to conceptualize, okay, I want this shot, want this to move that way? Because it seems like a lot of it has to do with cinematography and um understanding the shot, but understanding how to really get inside what they want for that shot. If they want,
Hmm.
power or weakness or whatever that is.
Yeah, definitely watching films, studying like different common angles that you see for certain types of scenes. Like if it's talking scenes, just knowing how often the usual movies cut and how long they stay on a shot for. So that's also something I would add to the list, is just study whatever you like. If you like a lot of anime, study that stuff. There's great staging in anime. If you like drama, watch a lot of drama, and pay attention to the staging, and try
Mm.
to implement it in your boards. I know whenever I'm doing a specific sequence, I have uh, I have a system where I just look up a ton of reference and I just have it all. I have it all there, and it kind of just puts me in the headspace of thinking more like cinematically.
Now, that's interesting you say that. When you go out, right? Because this isn't, you know, you live and breathe storyboarding, but do you see it impact like your life? Like, can you, when watching a film, are you like viewing it from a storyboard artist perspective, or do you just turn that off? Can you turn that off, or is that always there? It's like, okay, I like how they angled that. They could have worked on this better, and that didn't really have a good of an impact.
Yeah, that's super funny you said that, because I remember when I first started working storyboarding, I told my director like, "You guys ruined me," because like now I'll be watching stuff and I'm just like, "Oh wow, that's kind of lazy." You know what I'm saying? I'm like looking at it from a perspective of like how they shot it or how I could use that, as opposed to um just enjoying it for the experience. But for sure, that's not always the case. A lot of
hmm
the times, I like to just try to cut that out. If I'm just really enjoying the show, sometimes I won't even really notice like all the stuff in there until I really start to think about it. Like for me, for instance, I'll be watching something and I'm like watching it just as a regular. I'm having a good time,
hmm
and then I'll see something that like, oh, I could use that, and now I'm starting to think about storyboarding. So every other shot after that initial thought is like, oh wow, okay, so they followed up with that shot. Oh, that one's not that good. Okay, that's pretty
Mm.
cool because they did that, and then so definitely like once the ball gets rolling, I start to look at everything a little bit differently. But it's not something that's detrimental, because a lot of times I understand why like they cut stuff there, or I'm a fan of limited animation if it's done right. If they can find a way to cut corners and make it work, that's dope. Like a lot of old anime used to do that back in the day, where they would save the action scenes or the really complicated stuff for the scenes that they needed, and the stuff that wasn't so complicated, It would just be a little static, a little repetitive or looping the same stuff over. But if it's done right and it looks good, I always appreciate it. So even if I do notice it, as long as it's not terrible, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Fair enough.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've noticed that myself in animation where I've had to
Uh-huh.
pause certain shows. Like, yo, how did they cut from that? Oh, they did a smear for. Okay, that's interesting. I would have. Okay, got you. Um, you say you've well, actually, have you been watching any shows or any current shows that you're watching? And are like, oh, okay, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, man. I like to go back to and watch a lot of old stuff that I missed. Right now, I mean, I'm keeping up with Invincible. I think that
Okay.
show's awesome. A lot of homies that I work, that I know and worked with, are
Hmm.
working on that show. So they're doing an awesome job, and I've always been a fan of Invincible. So I'm keeping up with that weekly for sure. Definitely watching X Men.
Okay. Okay. All right.
um, I started Full Metal Alchemist a while back, and I skipped that one as a kid, so I wanted to watch it again. And I've always liked some of the just some of the shot choices and the art style and everything on the show.
Got you. Are there any favorite? Someone was asking. Are there any favorite characters that you like to draw?
Oh, in general, or just like
Yeah,
X
just
Men
I'm
or
assuming in general.
in general. Uh, I always like drawing Mega Man characters, man, or just like buff
Mega
people.
Man. Okay. So the
Yeah,
Hulk and stuff.
yeah, like the Hulk or like somebody like Sabretooth or
Okay.
um,
Is it more of a like a because I get that from it's fun to like animate those characters, but I can
mhm,
understand from like a I guess a 2D perspective of like is it the anatomy of how that flows
yeah.
in with the character? Yeah. Okay.
I've always loved anatomy growing up. I've been taking figure drawing since I was a lot younger. I'm like 14, and it was like the first thing I truly fell in love with.
Mm.
Before I kind of figured out that I wanted to do animation, which gave me a good base for sure, because you're gonna be drawing a lot of figures. I think that's why I just like drawing stuff with like an emphasis on anatomy, because I just like figure drawing, and like drawing people with muscles is just kind of like an easy way to practice that.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Two birds with one stone. Now,
yeah.
are you doing any projects of your own or like what is the future that you're looking at?
I have some projects that I'm working on right now. I just wrapped up on X Men, so I'm looking for the next opportunity, talking to a few people. But I have a few personal things I'm working on. I have some storyboards that I'm just doing for just myself.
Mm.
I have a project I'm working on with a friend. We're trying to like make a an animation from start to finish. So that should be fun. A short. Other than that, just kind of taking it day by day.
Got you. Do you plan on like possibly teaching in the future?
Possibly. I've gone out and like done little mentorships, and I've gone to like schools, and I'll give out general tips, or I'll look at portfolios and tell them what they need to do better, or what I did better to make certain areas look more professional. Um, Teaching, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not like thinking about it as like an option right away, but I like passing on knowledge. I love passing on knowledge, and I love like showing people how I make animation work,
Mm.
and how they could use that to maybe expedite their process and getting better.
Okay. Wow, that's good, man. It's always good to give back.
Hmm.
Now, just last few questions to follow up with was as far as I know with animation, you have a demo reel. How does that work with storyboarding? What is the demo reel for storyboarding?
So you could have a demo reel for storyboarding. It's not that common.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, whenever I see storyboard portfolios, they'll kind of have um, just their storyboard sequences mapped out. So they'll just kind of have the title of it, and they'll have them in like different sections organized throughout their page. I've seen demo reels, but that's more for heavy action, I would say, just because a lot of storyboarding isn't just about the movement, it's about like the subtleties and the acting and facial expressions, and some of that can kind of get um, cut out if you're making a demo reel and you're trying to find which pieces are the best for that to make this demo reel just a minute long and not too long. And um, Definitely, it's a thing that you could do for storyboarding, but I think more commonly just having your sequences laid out usually just does the job.
Okay, fair enough. Now, if somebody wanted to get in contact with you, whether it was for work or whether it was for possible mentorship, do you have like a Patreon, or how do people connect with you?
You could just hit me up through my socials. I'm always down to talk to people. You could just shoot me a message on Instagram. Um, it is JB underscore mad underscore art. So hit me up if you want.
And now the last question, and the most important question: uh, when are you going to be working on Spider-Man, the '90s Spider-Man?
Hey,
I
hopefully soon, dude. That'd be
know you've
dope.
heard something. Come on, spill it, spill the beans.
Hey, man. Hey. I hope it's done too. I hope it gets done too.
Man, that would be epic. All right, man. Are there any final thoughts or any words of advice you'd like to give? Up and coming artists or people who may already be seasoned vets are like, okay, I've just hit
Yeah.
maybe because I know in animation there are times where it's just like, okay, man, I'm tired, bruh. I'm I'm
Yeah.
tired, or you've been
Yeah.
trying things. It's like it's not working. Like, bruh,
Uh,
what? And sometimes those people usually give up sometimes and they pursue something
yeah.
else instead of pushing through. What?
Uh,
I'm sure you probably have had experiences like that
yeah.
throughout your career. How do
Yeah.
you how do you overcome?
When you have those moments, it sounds a little rough, but you just gotta like push through it.
Mm,
When I don't want to draw and I have a deadline, I have no choice. And
mm,
usually when I get the ball rolling and I start to draw, it's not as much of a daunting task. When there's a blank page, that's when it's scary. And that's where usually people
mm,
get stuck on is when they see that blank page. But you just have to get something started, even if it's ugly, even if you don't like it, you have to get your mind working to be able to make something that's good. So my advice would be just if you're feeling like you're in a rut and you need to get something done or you want to get something done, just do it. Like just be uncomfortable for a little bit. It's gonna pay off in the long run for sure.
man, great stuff, man. Absolutely, 100% true. Justin, I
Appreciate you, man.
greatly appreciate this interview and taking time out of your busy schedule. And I wish you nothing but success, man.
Appreciate you, man. It was nice talking, Lucas.
You as well, man. You take care.
Likewise, bro.
And we are going to end